welcome to Smart Property Investment. Today we'd love to have a bit of a chat with you about your views, particularly your new book, The Demographic Cliff. Now, to start off with, you've described in your book real estate as the most demographic-driven industry. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Why do you say that?
The demographic cliff means when a generation, a large generation, especially the baby boomers, peaks and their spending goes down as they save for retirement, their kids have left the nest, and you have to wait for the next generation to come along to have enough momentum to drive up the economy. And it usually takes about 12 to 14 years in between generation peaks before the next boom starts. The problem this time around, to be brief, is that most countries, and Australia is the one of the few exceptions, the next generation is actually smaller than the baby boom, and in some countries, and a lot of European countries and East Asian countries that have very low birth, there is no echo baby. There is no generation to follow. That their workforce is just slow, their spending's just slow, their real estate slows.
So you say Australia is the exception. What can we expect to see in Australia in the next 5 to 10 years then?
Well, again, your market is bubbling. It's exactly as expensive as California, like LA, San Francisco, San Diego, when our bubble burst. And by the way, when the US bubble burst, the economy wasn't going down, it was still going up. It started bursting in early '96. I predicted it in late 2005. It's just because it got so expensive. And it only burst in the areas that bubbled. The subprime crisis in the United States pretty much centered in 4 states out of 50, California, Arizona, Nevada, and Florida. I lived in California when the bubble was building and was in Miami, Florida when it finally peaked. So I know those areas. It's just like Sydney or these cities in Australia. All the cities are where you've got limited land for development because you got desert and water and ocean and hills. But they're attractive cities. Australia, people are immigrating to Australia faster than the US or Canada. We think we're immigration magnets. You're even more. You've got a large baby boom here pressuring, so you got this pressure on demand, limited supply in places like Sydney. That's what causes bubbles. Now, what people don't understand, they think, well, because of that, we'll never burst. Bubbles get driven up so high because of that combination that the young people who buy, and again, I know exactly, almost all the residential real estate is bought between age 27 and 41 or 42. When those people can't, especially young, cannot afford to buy because it's 10 times income, like in San Francisco or Sydney, then real estate starts going down, and the old people are sitting in it lose their value. Old people sit in real estate, young people buy it. But that also means that if we do eventually see, and I think you are going to see a 30 to 50% decline in the next several years in places like Sydney and Melbourne. If real estate declines, it's a big win for the young people who now can afford to buy a house at all or buy much more at less of their income. It's a big win, but the old people sitting in this are going to be hit hard. And people in the United States, we've had about 26% of houses underwater at one point, and I think we're going to end up with 40% before it's over. I don't think it's over in the United States yet, and I think it's just about to start in Australia.
So in the Australian context, what can investors do to either protect themselves from that bubble crashing or even to take advantage of it?
When real estate goes down, it's the most opportune because it dries up the fastest. Nobody can get loans and stuff. If you got cash and cash flow, you can take over real estate at unbelievable bargains. And we would just steer you and say, okay, if you're going to do that, then buy places that can be converted into affordable starter homes for the young next generation who are going to be dying to buy after not being able to afford to in places like Sydney and Melbourne, Brisbane, and so on, or that can be positioned as vacation homes for baby boomers. I tell you, if I was going to buy a vacation home from the United States in another country, and I said here because Sydney's my favorite city, I'd buy a place right downtown in Sydney, right down near to that Westfield restaurant complex. That's the coolest thing I've seen in the world. So some of the aging baby boomers will want to be downtown in condos and townhomes closer to the action and healthcare. Other ones will want to move farther out for affordability and lifestyle or to a vacation retirement area. So that's where I see the opportunities in the downturn. The secret is you got to get out of the way. You have to sell real estate that's not strategic to your life or business, and you have to wait to buy until we see this crash. Because if you're in the bubble, once it starts, you won't be able to move it.
What's a sign that the bubble, has reached its lowest point? Like, what's the sign that it's time to step in?
Well, it is hard because bubbles always get bigger. The more our incomes go up, the more credit becomes more available. Every bubble in history has always been higher than the last one. So first of all, it's got to be worse than the last one. In real estate, the main thing I look at is price to income. And again, in the best areas, London is 15 times income. But London is only 15 times income because 70% of the buyers of London downtown property are foreign. Rich people, foreign. I bet it's 50% here. It's 50% in places like San Francisco. It's foreign buyers and very wealthy people driving it up so much that every city I go to that is a great city, the people working in the city have to commute from hour and a half, 2 hours away. And this is even more so in Shanghai and Mumbai and emerging countries where price, it can be 20, 30 times income. So I look at that. When real estate gets that 10 times or more in developed countries, you're primed for a bubble burst. And that's exactly where the US bubble burst. That's exactly where Vancouver is in Canada, their hottest market. And that's exactly where Sydney and Melbourne are right now. That's when I say, watch out. And then I look and say, okay, it takes a trigger. Okay. Well, it's not going to be demographics here. It's going to be resource prices continuing to go down, and they're going down. We've predicted this. There's a vicious cycle. Resource prices go down. That hurts exports into Australia. How's real estate going to keep going up in these big cities when the strongest corporations and banks are getting hit? Resource prices go down. Emerging markets get hit. Oh, that hits China because now that's their biggest customers. China slows, exports slow, and then they buy less commodities. And then that hurts Australia and emerging countries. So it's a vicious cycle. I think that's what's going to trigger the crisis in Australia, not demographics. Demographics triggered it in the United States.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Harry.